Yeah, Eric, this is the King County executive who made that original goal of closing the youth jail by 2025. Dow Constantine has since moved the goalpost to 2028, and now his colleagues on the King County Council are wondering if it should happen at all. Problems of the present are colliding with goals for the future and the aim to close the King County Youth Jail by 2025.
With that being said, 2028 feels similarly unachievable.
In a hybrid King County Council meeting, juvenile division prosecutors reported an uncomfortable truth.
Juvenile violent crime is unfortunately on the rise as we are just understanding the scope of the impact that the response to the pandemic has had on our children and communities.
That's even by their own account that youth detention numbers have dropped in a decade. How do we balance those two numbers?
What it shows is that the kids that are remaining in detention are some of the most serious cases and that have the highest needs.
Superior Court presiding Judge Ketu Shah told the council the criminal justice system needs to keep its toolbox full of tools. This after a movement and protests in 2020 to end King County youth incarceration by next year.
I just don't see it, not with the level of violence going on in the community right now.
Just in my district last week, 2 16-year-olds executed and left on the side of I-5.
The overwhelming majority of King County's population is going to find that unacceptable. And if they don't, the legislature will. And if they don't, the Superior Court judges will. And if they don't, the U.S. Department of Justice will find that to be unconstitutional.
The council committee merely voted to only acknowledge it received a report from a task force on the subject, suggesting it was clear, based on the current situation, there is not broad consensus for a youth jail replacement, meaning those past promises are also not close to fruition. However, everyone seemed to agree that there may be better ways to handle low-level juvenile offenders or perhaps reuse a part of the existing Justice Center in Seattle's Central District, but not going as far as what some of the protesters wanted a few years ago with a respite and re-entry system without any sort of locks. We did hear from the council committee chair today who made it clear that the council will not be advancing any sort of policy decisions at this point. That's the story for now. Live in Seattle, I'm Chris Daniels, KOMO News.
Thank you, Chris. Today, KOMO caught up with King County Executive Dow Constantine at a separate event, and we asked him about juvenile crime and youth detention.
On any given day, there are about 35 to 40 youth, charges youth, in our centralized detention facility that is built to accommodate 112. It is going to be a long and arduous process to get to the point where we can convert that 112-bed facility to some other use that perhaps makes better use of that capital investment.
Constantine also said it'll take what he called a community-wide effort to focus on the teenagers committing the most violent crimes and get them the help they need to prevent them from becoming repeat offenders.
Not an easy outing for Darryl Powell, the interim CEO of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, as Seattle city leaders question the progress on getting people off the streets.
We are not seeing in Seattle the measurable results. Folks are on the street.
I'm really interested to hear what are some of the lessons learned, mistakes made, and how we're changing that for the future.
Powell pointed to the nearly 1,500 emergency housing vouchers KCRHA is utilizing to get people out of tents and bring them indoors. He also touted the partnership with the state to clear encampments along freeways. But council members wanted to know what's being done in Seattle, and when KCRHA will enlist other cities to contribute funding or land for shelters and other facilities.
We are also trying to get to the bottom of why things have not been working quite as well as we had anticipated they would in the beginning.
Powell says all contracts with service providers are in place and talks are underway to deliver measurable outcomes. But much of that work gets ignored by local media.
There's a lot of good that is happening right now that gets lost in the noise.
So KOMO News pressed for answers, but Powell says he's too new on the job to be fielding questions and walked away. A number of points that were made, and really we do want to hear about the good work you think is not being covered. KOMO News asked about the hotel vouchers and the service provider contracts, but we were told to listen to the recording of the council meeting.
Those things that we talked about, we were intentional to talk about, and so there's nothing more to add at this time.
Joel Marino, KOMO News.